सियावर रामचंद्र की।
Five spellbinding images from the Bhumi Pujan at the Shri Ram Nagri Ayodhya ahead of the construction of the Divya Bhavya Ram Mandir at Ayodhya. Prime Minister Narendra Modi did a Poorn Shastang Dandavat, total surrender to Maryada Purushottam Shri Ram. I'm Gaurav Sawant. We will get you more on these images and the big message from Prime Minister when he said, Bhai Bhin, hoye na pri, no respect without fear. All that and much more on the broadcast. And as always, let's get started with the National Dhoti Kurta and Ang Vastram. Prime Minister Narendra Modi boarded a special Indian Air Force aircraft to Lucknow and then a Mi-17 chopper to Saket University at Ayodhya. He was clad every inch a Rambhakt as he first went to the Hanuman Garhi temple to pray to Sankat Mochan, Lord Hanuman, the problem solver even of Maryada Purushottam Shri Ram. The chief mahant of Hanuman Garhi tied a mukut like pagdi on Prime Minister Narendra Modi, gave him a silver crown and a mace, gada, that Lord Hanuman carried. And this was a part of respect. There you see these images of Prime Minister Narendra Modi flanked by Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath doing a parikrama of the Hanuman Garhi before going for the Bhumi Pujan and before a darshan of Ramlala Virajman. I now want to shift to the next and perhaps the most spectacular image of the Sashtang Dandavat Pranam. Prime Minister Narendra Modi went in for a darshan of Ramlala Virajman. Let's take a look at that image now of Sashtang Dandavat. Here Prime Minister Narendra Modi, after Hanuman Garhi, did a Sashtang Dandavat Pranam, and this is a sign of Poorn Samarpan. I would like our producers to now shift this image from here to the second image of the Sashtang Dandavat. There you see that image of Poorn Samarpan or complete surrender to Maryada Purushottam Shri Ram in his Balavastha. The Prime Minister did a parikrama even here. A Ram Bhakt, the Prime Minister was doing, look at this, this is a symbol of Poorn Samarpan or complete surrender to the deity, to Ramlala Virajman. 6 angs or Sashtang, 6 parts of the body touching the floor as a mark of total surrender to the Almighty. So here is the Prime Minister of the country surrendering to the supreme deity, Lord Ram. Now, let's talk about the Prime Minister's big chant of Siyavar Ramchandra ki Jai. You must hear the Prime Minister. Siyavar Ramchandra ki Jai is a major shift from the traditional chant of Jai Shri Ram. From Jai Shri Ram, it shifts to Jai Siya Ram. So, perhaps a very subtle departure from the aggressive Ram Bhakti to respect for Devi Sita, for Mata Sita first. Her name ahead of Maryada Purushottam Shri Ram. Let's listen in to Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Now another image which is considered very, very auspicious, the planting of the Kalptaru. The Prime Minister planted a parijat or a kalptaru tree. Let's now show you those images of planting of the kalptaru, a tree that is not only said to give long life but also give, apart from a long life, fulfill wishes of the people who plant that tree. There you see the image of planting of the kalptaru at the Shri Ram temple premises. Many devotees know that Kalptaru or Parijat, incidentally, according to ancient culture, was Devi Sita's favorite tree. It's also said in Hindu religion that this was the tree that was used along with a mountain for Sagar Manthan between Devatas and Asurs and is considered extremely auspicious. I quickly now want to cut across to India Today's National Affairs editor Rahul Srivastav, who is standing by at the Shri Ram Janmabhoomi Ayodhya. Rahul, we saw a different face of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, a staunch Hindu to the core, and here he actually followed the religion to the T. This is the beginning, as he says, of a new dawn of the Ram Rajya.
Gaurav, I'll say that Prime Minister Narendra Modi today displayed why he is called the most consummate politician in the country today, with nobody actually standing close to him. You see, as you mentioned, Siyawar Ramachandra ki jai, that's very gender correct. Also remember, Gaurav, when he mentions Siyawar Ramachandra ki jai, Mata Sita, that is Lord Ram's wife, she hails from Mithila. And Mithila is in Bihar. And Bihar is a state which is going to go to elections. So it's not an ordinary mention. But I think it was also a reconciliatory tone. He did mention Siyawar Ramchandra in the beginning, but later he brought in Jai Shri Ram, so he didn't disappoint those who might have been expecting a Jai Shri Ram chant from him. He talked about how Ramcharitmanas and Ramayana are very inclusive in their philosophies, be it tribals, be it those who are socially and economically weak. That's where the Prime Minister sent out a signal. The Prime Minister did not do any kind of chest beating, which might indicate that he is the winner who takes it all. I think that was an attempt to emerge as a more statesman-like leader. Then there is a very important point in his speech, Gaurav. If you see, all throughout the speech, he talked about 15th August and the Bhumi Pujan being as big as the 15th August liberation. I think the Prime Minister indicated how big the moment it is and how he is connected to that moment. He also played the card of being the perfect RSS man, Gaurav. And I think when Mr. Mohan Bhagwat, the RSS chief, spoke, he did mention Prime Minister Narendra Modi that in his term, the Ram Mandir Bhumi Pujan is happening. So what can say an entire spectrum of political messaging created by Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
A devotee of Maryada Purushottam Shri Ram to the core. Of course, when you see him travel to various Shiv Mandirs like in Nepal, and remember, Mata Sita also has a connect with Janakpur. So there are many subtle messages that are taking place at multiple levels. He's also a Shiv Bhakt. I've seen him at the Pashupatinath temple. I've seen him at the Kedarnath temple. The Prime Minister is a devotee to the core. But I now want to shift focus, and Rahul, stay with me, to the other big message that emerged from Ayodhya, where the Prime Minister said, Bhai bin hot na preet. So while he's quoting Goswami Tulsidas in Ramcharitmanas, but he's also sending out another big message, perhaps to our adversaries, when he also tells our own people that Janani Janmabhumishcha Swargadapi Gariyasi, which means Janani, mother, and Janmabhumi, motherland, Swargadapi Gariyasi, are greater than even heaven on earth. So what's the Prime Minister's subtle message while he lays the foundation stone or does a Bhumi Pujan at the grand ceremony at Ayodhya? Let's listen in to the Prime Minister's message.
ये भी श्री राम की नीति है, और वो क्या है? भय बिनु होई न प्रीति।
ओम भूर्भुवः स्वः नन्दायै नमः। ओम भूर्भुवः स्वः अजितायै नमः। सर्वोपचारार्थे गन्धाक्षतपुष्पाणि समर्पयामि।
As Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke of the vision of Ram Rajya on the occasion of the Bhumi Pujan at the Shri Ram temple in Ayodhya, he referred to the Niti or principles followed by Maryada Purushottam Shri Ram. There is no respect without fear.
ये भी श्री राम की नीति है, और वो क्या है? भय बिनु होई न प्रीति। इसलिए हमारा देश जितना ताकतवर होगा, उतनी ही प्रीति और शांति भी बनी रहेगी। राम की यही नीति, राम की यही रीति सदियों से भारत का मार्गदर्शन करती रही है.
This is being seen in context with India's aggressive stance against China at the line of actual control. In fact, Union Law and IT Minister Ravi Shankar Prasad, in an exclusive interview to India Today, elaborated on this.
The world is trusting Modi ji, the world is trusting India, and the world is trusting India's human resource, open society, democracy. When the Prime Minister says, Bhai bin hot na preet, he wants India to be resurgent strong militarily and also economically.
The Union Law Minister insists this is a glimpse of the Ram Rajya Prime Minister Narendra Modi refers to, where India intends to increase its military and economic power. Prasad spoke at length about India's big push towards Atmanirbhar Bharat and success in attracting investment. Prasad said top global companies were investing in India, and not only were crores being invested, but lakhs of jobs were also being created, and this was a clear signal to India's adversaries. The Prime Minister also referred to Shri Ram's statement on mother and motherland, both being greater than heaven.
श्री राम जी का भी कमिटमेंट है, जननी जन्मभूमिश्च स्वर्गादपि गरीयसी. अपनी मातृभूमि स्वर्ग से भी बढ़कर होती है.
Despite a 3-month-long standoff at the line of actual control in eastern Ladakh, India refuses to buckle under Chinese pressure and continues to stare the dragon down. Even after 5 rounds of core commander talks, India continues to insist on restoration of status quo ante at the line of actual control, warning China of consequences on bilateral ties unless the pre-May 2020 situation and patrolling rights are fully restored. Bureau Report, India Today.
Few people understand matters military better than India Today's Shiv Arur, and I quickly want to cut across to him to understand the implications of the Prime Minister's statement. And Shiv, when the Prime Minister says Bhai bin hot na preet, and Union IT Minister says that India is seeking more investment into our country, we need to be a stronger country. Correlate the two with the situation on ground along the LAC and India-China relations.
Well, one of the things, Gaurav, that actually stood out in the backdrop of the Ram Mandir ceremony by the Prime Minister, was him touching upon the idea of peace through strength. Now, I'm not sure, if that was pointed at China. This was, of course, for domestic consumption and for the people who were actually watching. But it's interesting because there is the context of the Ayodhya backdrop, but very much the live situation of what's happening in eastern Ladakh. And when you have the Prime Minister talking about peace through strength, I'm somehow also reminded by what's happening in the talks between India and China. The fact that especially in the last round of talks, even though there's no connection whatsoever, I'm just reminded by how you had a China which had simply refused to acknowledge the friction point in Pangong, for instance. And you had the Indian army very peacefully, not just mobilizing, but basically telling China, look, you can face the consequences later, but the fact is there is going to be no forward movement in these discussions unless you acknowledge and commit to disengagement from this side. That's just one example. And India very well knows, that there can be no respect from the other side without some fear being placed in their hearts. China has always respected strength, Gaurav. And I think that's another element that needs to be looked at very closely in light of what India has been doing so far. Yes, we're seeing a familiar flurry of weapons acquisitions coming in light of what's happening. Yes, we're seeing emergency mobilizations taking place. But the fact is there is a live situation, and the Indian armed forces are very clear that this is an adversary that needs to fear India to actually respect India and actually commit to this disengagement. So I think there are many parallels to be drawn, and that's definitely one of them.
Oh, absolutely, Shiv. And I've just returned from this part of Ladakh, and clearly, apart from acquisitions that you're talking about, India is also speeding up road construction and infrastructure development in this area. Undeterred by what China may feel, India's infrastructure development program is only intensifying, and we'll have much more on that in the days and weeks to come. But for the moment, I want to once again come back to the Shri Ram Janmabhoomi at Ayodhya, where the atmosphere was full of devotion in Ayodhya when Prime Minister Narendra Modi did the Bhumi Pujan for a Divya Bhavya Ram Mandir to be built at Ayodhya amidst chants of Jai Siya Ram this time. Now take a look at this report.
सियावर रामचंद्र की, सियावर रामचंद्र की, जय सिया राम, जय सिया राम.
And paid tribute to those behind the struggle to find an abode for the Ram Lalla residing in the tent.
हमें सबके साथ से, सबके विश्वास से, सबका विकास करना है. श्री राम का सामाजिक संदेश है, पहुष्ट नर नारी कह समाज उत्सव शोभितः. नर नारी सभी समान रूप से सुखी हो, भेदभाव नहीं.
Modi took special care to project the inclusiveness of Indian culture, asserting that Ram Rajya bars discrimination and is steeped in the spirit of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vishwas.
बरसों से टाट और टेंट के नीचे रहे हमारे रामलला के लिए अब एक भव्य मंदिर का निर्माण होगा.
With Ankit Tyagi, Rahul Srivastav and Aishwarya Paliwal in Ayodhya. Bureau Report, India Today.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi was at Ayodhya 3 decades ago as a Karyakarta of the Bharatiya Janata Party. And as a Karyakarta of the Bharatiya Janata Party, when he was accompanying Murli Manohar Joshi, we are told the Prime Minister made a promise to some of the people he'd met there, that he will only return when he's able to build a Divya Bhavya Ram Mandir. The Prime Minister returned as the Prime Minister of the country after 3 decades. So from a Karyakarta, a Kar Sevak to the Pradhan Sevak of the country, life's come a full circle for the Prime Minister, and now a Divya Bhavya Ram Mandir will be built.
From being the first charioteer of the Ram Janmabhoomi movement to laying the foundation stone of the Ram Mandir. For Prime Minister Modi, it's a culmination of a shared dream by millions. Three decades ago, in September 1990, Lal Krishna Advani set off from Somnath in Gujarat on his Ram Rath Yatra, setting the course for the BJP, changing the politics of the country forever. And besides Advani and Murli Manohar Joshi, there was young Narendra, less visible at the time, but very much embarked on the landmark Rath Yatra. A young Modi, sporting his trademark smile and beard, could be seen galvanizing the crowds as the Ram Rath went across the country, welcomed by crowds in their thousands. A BJP General Secretary at the time, Modi was very much the party Karyakarta, on his way, but nowhere near the towering leader that he is today. But even then, he was resolute. In 1991, when Modi was in Ayodhya with Murli Manohar Joshi and took a solemn vow that he would not set foot in the temple town till the Ram Mandir begins.
फोटो हमने 91 में मोदी जी की खींची थी जब वो रामलला का जन्मोत्सव था, उसमें आए थे. तो एक संजोग ही था कि मैंने उनसे प्रश्न ही कर लिया था कि अब कब आएंगे, क्योंकि वो दाढ़ी उस समय रखाए थे, मुझे अच्छे लगे. तो उस समय कोई बहुत बड़ा नाम उनका नहीं था, क्योंकि ना मुख्यमंत्री थे न थे, तो मुझे उनसे ही पूछना पड़ा. तो उन्होंने कहा जब मंदिर बनेगा तब मैं आऊँगा.
And on Wednesday, the Prime Minister kept that promise. He took center stage as he laid the foundation stone for a grand Ram temple. It began with this signature obeisance.
बरसों से टाट और टेंट के नीचे रहे हमारे रामलला के लिए अब एक भव्य मंदिर का निर्माण होगा. सदियों से चल रहे इस व्यतिक्रम से राम जन्मभूमि आज मुक्त हुई है.
For Modi, a 3-decade journey comes full circle. From the dusty highways of India to the hallowed ground of the Ram Janmabhoomi. 2 journeys, both with very different ends. Or as Modi himself calls it, a real beginning. Bureau Report, India Today.
Hello everyone, this is Rahul Kamal here. Hope you enjoyed this video. For the latest news and analysis, like and subscribe the India Today YouTube channel and don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated.